Welcome to Overwatch, Evolving the Art.
Welcome everyone to the evolution of art for Overwatch 2. I'm Bill Petrus, Senior Art Director.
I'm Arnold Sang, the Assistant Art Director.
And I'm John LaFleur, the Technical Director.
So we hope you're having a great BlizzCon today. Our team has been working really hard and we're really excited to share with you some of the ideas and sort of, I would say, special moments during the development of the Overwatch 2 art style. So first of all, what we're really going to talk about is probably our biggest inspiration, and that is the original Overwatch art style. And in that art style, we wanted to retain these values of strong silhouettes in the characters, a bright, beautiful world, a great sense of color. We were hugely inspired by the original Overwatch in that way. Also, we want to create more enhanced look for these heroes, which Arn and John are going to talk about in a little bit. Also, we want to create a much more, I would say, in-depth thematic feeling in the world, much more areas to explore than the original Overwatch. And finally, we're going to talk about the dynamic world and how much more believable and alive this world is. And along with that, the technology as well and how that supports it. So that being said, Arn, take it away.
All right, so with Overwatch 2, we're setting out to redefine a sequel. And what does it mean to make a sequel for Overwatch? Overwatch has always been about its heroes. So for Overwatch 2, we wanted to make sure that our heroes could have a fresh new look. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that these iconic heroes were still the ones that you remember from the classic Overwatch. So, Jeff likes to use Batman as an example, but I think superheroes are actually a really great example and look into how we approach this whole process. Superhero movies like Iron Man is a good example that I like to use. You watch Iron Man 1 and he's got, the classic armor. And then Iron Man 2, suddenly it's a triangle instead of a circle. And if you pay close attention, all the little details are a little bit different. And as an artist, I really geek out on that stuff. And that's something we wanted to have for Overwatch as well. Tracer, our classic hero, how could we take her, find elements that are, keep the spirit of the original design, and while explaining a little bit about how these characters, where are they in the story of Overwatch? So we took a different approach for every hero. You see Winston up there. He orchestrated the recall, got everybody back together. But he's got a few upgrades. He's one of our most iconic characters. So we didn't want to change him too much, but if you look closely, his armor's a little sleeker, his backpack's a little more techy. He's got a little console to call on the heroes and coordinate the attacks. We also have May. It's been a long time since May, or it's been a long way from Antarctica.
I think she walked all the way.
Yeah. She walked or she took the bus. I don't know what. But she's a long way from being a scientist, from being a climatologist. And that first moment she's on that dropship with Winston and Tracer overlooking Paris. We wanted to make sure that she was ready for battle. So we gave her a couple upgrades, made her suit a little bit more techy, a little bit sleeker. And at the same time, it allows us to show off some of the cool tech that you guys are working on. But one of my favorites is Genji. As you guys saw in the announcement cinematic that we showed yesterday, 0 Hour. I can't get enough. I can just watch that over and over, and I still remember the very first time that Ben Dye and the Story and Franchise group came over and showed us the storyboards. And even in the very, very beginning, the storyboards had that moment of Genji coming out and deflecting those shots, and it was the coolest moment ever. And it has always, every time that moment comes up, whether it's from storyboards or watching the final version yesterday with everybody, I get goosebumps. And funny enough, in the storyboard, they had given him a hoodie, and he kind of comes out and takes out the hoodie, oh, it's Genji. But at the time, he was only wearing a hoodie. He didn't have pants on. And we, so we didn't realize that Genji was actually naked this whole time. So we're like, if he's gonna wear a hoodie, he probably should put some pants on as well.
Probably.
So Jung-Ah Lee, a talented concept artist from the Story and Franchise Group, took that idea, fleshed out a concept, a design that we liked so much that we took that and we adopted that as Genji's new look. And we have a lot of cool new looks to talk about today. Here's an awesome image by one of our artists, Ness Kane, kind of illustrating Brigitte and Reinhardt arriving at Watchpoint Gibraltar after the attack on Paris. And Brigitte, she's been with Reinhardt for a long time now. They've been in many battles together. And Reinhardt, he likes to get in a lot of trouble.
He does.
And his armor gets dinged up all the time. And Brigitte is always constantly upgrading it. But it wasn't until they got to Watchpoint Gibraltar that, now she has Winston's help. And, together they come up with Reinhardt's, new armor. And she sprinkles a little bit more personality, of her own personality in there as well, which is really cool. We have a lot of cool new looks for the characters for you guys to check out in our demos. If you guys have played Toronto and Rio de Janeiro, you can select some of these cool heroes. We also have a sneak peek that you guys saw yesterday of Torbjorn and Bastion. Still in the concept phase, but shows a little bit about where they are in their story. Torbjorn, he chose not to answer Winston's recall. He chose to, stay at home and tinker around with his gadgets, so he's a little bit more casual, wearing something you might see him wear in his own garage or in his workshop. But then, Bastion's now with him, and together they kind of upgrade the tech side a little bit. And Bastion even borrowed Torbjorn's hat.
Yeah, I love that hat, but one of the things I really like is that 09 on you can see on Reinhardt there.
Yeah, so if you guys notice, look closely, like Reinhardt has this 09 on his shoulder pad, and if you guys paid attention to the original Reinhardt design from Overwatch, he has an 08 on there. So this is like the 9th iteration. Brigitte's really taking him to the next level. But there's a deeper story behind that number, and it makes me think back on Project Titan, actually, which we were all a part of as well.
Yes.
Back on Project Titan, there was a character called the Juggernaut, which was this big, burly, armored character, and we went through iteration after iteration on the Juggernaut designs. And by the time we got to the 8th design, that was Reinhardt. We had rebooted the team, and the project was now Overwatch, but we wanted to carry some of that legacy, all that stuff we learned from working on the Juggernaut into Reinhardt. So, Brigitte is now helping us carry that legacy forward as well with the 09 version of Reinhardt's armor. And funny enough, this version actually artistically is a little bit inspired by some of those early versions back on Project Titan. So, but we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into one of the characters' designs and really walk you through the process of what we were thinking about as we were designing these new looks. So Tracer, she's one of the most important characters, if not the most important characters in Overwatch. So when we're thinking of the new looks, if we could do something for Tracer, maybe we can carry that philosophy forward for all of our heroes. And like I mentioned, we always want to take things that are iconic to the characters and preserve those. For Tracer, we identified that as, one, her colors. So Tracer's colors are very iconic, not only for her character, but also for Overwatch as a whole. Overwatch, the white armor, the orange tights also happen to be the colors of Overwatch, the game. So we wanted to preserve that. We also wanted to preserve her silhouette. So Tracer is immediately recognizable with her spiky hair, her popped up collar, and the way that her sleeves are folded up, and down to her sleek tights and running shoes. So silhouette is a really important thing for us as well.
Yeah, and even from the gameplay and the tech side, silhouette's something that we don't want to break too much of, because the hitboxes are something you want to keep as sort of what you see is what you hit for the player. So we want to make sure that that silhouette fits fairly close to the hitbox, even with the new looks.
Yeah, we learned a lot from making skins for the original Overwatch, and we carried some of that knowledge when approaching these new looks. But from there, we were thinking, okay, so what are some things we can change about Tracer? What are some things we can take and maybe push to the next level, and maybe at the same time highlight some of the cool tech that we have from the engineering side? And we thought, original Tracer, she's kind of a mix of a couple of themes. She's got this this athletic look to her that looks like she's always on the run, but she's also a former test pilot. So we gave her the flight jacket, with the worn leather, the wool collar, and also the flight harness with the cool retro patches. We thought that was a really cool look for original Tracer. It was a very retro look, and we thought if we took that retro look and we pushed it to the next level, evolved it a little bit, maybe that would be an angle into how we can approach leveling Tracer up. So with all that, we dived right into ideation. So this is a stage of concept where we take our initial philosophy and we try it out with different iterations. So with the first one, A, on the far left you see there, if you squint your eyes, her silhouette really doesn't change much. It's really, like we said, the collar is still there, the sleeves. It's really the internal details that have shifted a little bit. Some of the patterns are different, and we're thinking, okay, maybe some of the materials on her jacket might be different, but at first glance, maybe it's a little bit too conservative. So we thought, okay, let's try a couple more where we push it a little bit more. With B and C, we were thinking, okay, let's take that athletic look that we like from Tracer and really take that to the next step. So she gets a little bit more casual here. We start breaking the silhouette really carefully. The jacket with B gets a little bit more poofy at the bottom, and we're thinking maybe even her chronal harness maybe could reduce a little bit in size. We imagine okay, maybe this is Tracer after Overwatch has been shut down, and she's maybe walking down the streets of Kings Row. She doesn't need all of that juice, all of that energy from her chronal harness that she uses in battle. Maybe she has a slightly more reduced version. And we took that even to another step with C, elaborating more on hey, what are some different silhouettes we can play with on the jacket? Maybe there's a cool poncho look, which I personally really liked. It gave her a really hip kind of look. But then we were thinking, okay, wait a minute. If we're taking Tracer, like these iterations of Tracer, putting her on that dropship on the way to Paris, and the city's under attack, May and Winston are ready for battle, and she looks like she's just she's going out for a stroll or something like that. There's a little bit of a disconnect. So okay, let's get her battle ready. Winston probably prepped up both May and Tracer and himself to go into the battle. So with the last iteration on D, we tried to take more of a sci-fi techie approach. What if she was just like, this is a cool updated version of battle armor for Tracer? And that's kind of really where we landed. We really liked this version of Tracer, but there were things that I think during the exploration that we liked as well. So we took all of those elements and we kind of combined it. And this is the final concept for the new look for Tracer. So with this new look, this is the final concept. It's really only the beginning in bringing these characters to life in Overwatch 2. From there, it really goes to our talented character artists and engineers to bring Tracer to life inside the engine. So here's a look at Tracer, the new look for Tracer in Overwatch 2. And one of the things that I think of when I look at this screenshot here is, if you guys are familiar with Overwatch, you've probably seen the lobby screen, the main menu screen where you see Tracer with her hands on her hips, and you kind of see her from the thighs or the waist up. And she looks great in Overwatch 1. With Overwatch 2, because we wanted to tell more story, we wanted to get more intimate with the characters. I still remember the moment where Jeremy Craig, one of the designers who used to be on the team, he worked really closely with the UI, and he just took that camera on that UI screen and he zoomed it right into Tracer, and he was like, how close can we get?
I think that was a really inspirational moment actually too, because when Jeremy did that, we seen Tracer in this brand new close-up look, and we were all huddled around the computer looking at him with everybody, and we're like, yes, we want to do this. And John on the tech side, can we do this? John.
Yeah, well, when we looked at it from the technical perspective, we thought, yeah, that's really inspirational, but also perspirational, because it's going to be a lot of work. So we, if you look at that image, it's so much more detail there that you need to really make that character stand out. And luckily we have a very talented team that works on these heroes. And Renaud Galland, our lead character modeler, and on the engineering side, we have Bruce Wilkie and Marco Alamia, who have worked tirelessly to get the character to where it is. It involved revamping not just the materials, but also the shaders we use to render and the geometry for the character.
Yeah, so if you guys have checked out our new website on playoverwatch.com, you can see a comparison between the the classic looks and the new looks, and it really gives you a sense of how the outfits changed. But today, we really want to get in closer and really show you, when you get up close to Tracer, the difference between Tracer from original Overwatch to Overwatch 2, and when you get to this level, you can really see the technology upgrades that we have for this new game. And one of the things that jumps out at me first is the hair. If you look at Tracer's hair from the original Overwatch, you'll notice, we designed it for in the game, she's moving really quickly. You see her from a certain distance, and it really does a good job of bringing out the silhouette that we talked about and popping the highlights. But when you zoom in, it kind of really breaks down in the sense that it doesn't feel very natural. There might be a little bit of a plasticky look to it. So, and as always, we always aspire when we watch the animated shorts that our story and franchise development team does, to have that level of fidelity that we have in the animated shorts. And for hair, that was one of our inspirations. Like, how can we get that natural looking feel?
Yeah, and it plays off. I'm sorry if I'm turning around, our monitors are off, but it definitely plays off as much softer if you look at it in comparison to our original Overwatch. And you can also see a lot of the detail in shadows. There's much more detail in the shadows around the face. And then there's some detail maps that we use to bring out the freckles on oh, thank you. Some detail maps we use to bring out the freckles on the face. And even with some of the heroes, you can see the pores. So probably our heroes are going to get a little bit subconscious about how close we're zooming in on them. But yeah, and then if you look at the eyes, we actually have new geometry for the eyes as well as shaders, and that allows us to get much more expression. As Arn was mentioning, it's really important for the story mode. And then here in the vest, you can see where the detail maps kind of play off in the inside of the vest, and then even off on the sleeves there. You get much more detail. But then we look at the skin. The skin is, you can read much more out of the skin from the lighting and the environment.
Yeah, the skin shader, I still remember the first time I was looking over Renault's shoulder when he was like, hey, come check this out, I got something new to show you. And he turns on the new skin shader for the first time, and all the heroes there's this level of believability, and it just felt so much more alive and real, and it was really amazing to see it for the first time.
Now, when you guys are talking about shaders, for some of the people here that might not know what a shader is.
That's not you, Billy.
It's not me, but could you enlighten us?
Yeah, a shader is a special program that we send down to the graphics hardware, and that enables us to render each of the different materials on the jacket and the face and in the eyes in a very special way. So a lot of the effects that you get from the hair and the eyes and the way that it reflects light differently, that's all specified in those shader programs.
So next, we're going to show a video that shows off some of the heroes in Overwatch 2. You might have seen this yesterday in some of the panels, and this is personally my favorite way to just look at all of these new looks for the heroes and the tech. And I just want to give a shout out to talented members of our team, Dion Rogers doing the lighting for this, Ryan Deniston on the animation and posing, and our VFX team for tying it all together. It really gives a good look at how these heroes come to life in the game. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, guys. It was hard to follow up. So as Arn and John are talking about the new enhanced heroes for Overwatch 2, let's talk about the environment. Let's talk about what's new in the Overwatch 2 world. So the environmental team, led by Dion Rogers and his group, we're very excited. And we want to share with you some of the inner workings of what's going on and some bullet points on some of our values that became Overwatch 2 for the environments. So for us, we're very passionate about creating even more locations from around the world, many more places globally that we can travel to for Overwatch 2. We also want to create even more memorable themes in Overwatch 2. For us, it's sort of a passion for the player to experience all these new, I would say, feelings and new colors and experiences. For me personally, looking back on the original WoW, which I had the privilege of being the art director on, one of the fond memories I have in working with that team was there was a zone in Azeroth, a couple of them. It was like Duskwood, Elwyn, and Westfall. And those three zones really inspired just my imagination and what world building could do to tell story for the player. And we wanted to take all those things we learned and bring them onto Overwatch 2 as well. And also, we want to create a more dynamic world in Overwatch 2. Arn always talks about how the heroes, it's all about motion and being dynamic. You know, when you do, we want to carry that over into the world itself. So a much more, I would say, a live world with many more interactive elements in the world too. Let's take a look at a video of some of the latest maps too that we're working on. Here's Gothenburg. This is where Torbjorn has his workshop. Toronto, a Blizzard first. Woo! Monte Carlo. There's a race car there for you, Johnny, too. Thank you. John loves racing. The club, Lucio's Club in Rio de Janeiro. The Omnic ship, also in Rio.
That's very dynamic, really.
Very dynamic. We hope you guys are really enjoying this demo on the floor too. Please let us know any feedback as well. We'd love to hear it.
So Billy,
Yes, John.
For those of us that aren't artistically inclined, can you explain to us what theming is?
I can certainly try. So when in context of environmental theming that I was describing, all it really is creating a memorable mood or a feeling that you have as you explore through this environment. And these concepts are an example done by Patrick Fallwetter, a talented concept artist that works on Overwatch 2. And these buildings are all from Toronto. And the one on the far right there is this brown kind of classic building, and the bottom's kind of teched up. And that might be in one area of the map in Toronto, but in the other area there might be a more like futuristic design, like the building in the middle. And even color, like the blue building on the far left, actually has a different look or feel. So these are ideas in theming that we try to develop for the player as we build these maps around the world. Another example, Temple of Anubis. I'm sure people are familiar with this.
2014 BlizzCon. 5 years ago we announced.
In our first map.
Yep.
Arn's favorite.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
So on this map, actually, the values of Overwatch, the original Overwatch, we still really follow. Like, we love to have, great silhouettes. We like to have strong themes in there. But as you look at this, it's sort of all the same theme. It has this sandy, sort of ancient kind of feeling to it. It was very unique.
Yeah, I think it really reminds me of when we were designing the art style guide for the original Overwatch. We had this theory where maybe if we had like the environments as a wash of color, for example, our first map, Temple of Anubis, a wash of gold, golden sand.
Yes.
Hanamura would be like pink, and maybe King's Row, dark blue. That we had this theory that the characters, if we made them vibrant enough, would just pop out, all in the name of readability, which is always very important to us. And then our visual effects and UI on top of that would have this layering effect. And we're thinking, yeah, the environments, they could just be one color and recede to the background. And I think there are certain things that really worked in that way for Temple of Anubis. That's why it's still one of my favorite maps.
Yeah, and the interesting thing from a technical perspective is that sort of wash of of color, that almost singular theme that we have. To us, it means that themes to us means more textures, it means more models, so that means more memory. And one of the values we had on Overwatch was we wanted to encourage the players to switch heroes at any moment. So we wanted to be able to leave a lot of the streaming off of the hard drive to the heroes. So if I switch a hero, I want it to be able to pop in pretty quickly. So what we did was we said, well, we're gonna keep all of the map memory resident the whole time. And that meant that with the singular themes, it was much easier for us. So less themes equals less memory.
So just to make things a little hard for John and his team.
Yeah, I see a lot more themes there.
We added a lot more themes. So in Overwatch 2, for example, on Rio de Janeiro, which I hope you guys are enjoying on the floor outside, there's a lot more themes out there. We have, still that wash of color that Arnold's talking about, but we'll have a blue wash inside the Omnic ship, or that golden dawn of a new sort of era in Overwatch on the beach, and we have many more themes in there for the players to experience, which I'm sure John and your group, you guys just attack that,
No,
right?
that's easy.
That's easy.
No, when we looked at it, it's not just the themes, but the spaces in between, because as we go from one theme to the other, from a map creation standpoint, you don't want to have these themes just abutting right up next to one another. So there's spaces between those often, and so that makes a much bigger map. If you played Rio out on the floor, you'd notice that it's bigger than any of the maps that we've done before, easily 2 times. And so when we look at that, there's a couple problems that come up. One is rendering. So if you're looking across the map, there's a lot more to render, and we want to limit that. We want to make sure that we always keep the 60 FPS that we try to achieve on our recommended specs. So what we had to do was sort of do offline calculations of potentially visible set and give the artists new tools that would enable them to help to tell us and tell the engine what can the player see at any given moment. And so we have to do that, but on top of that, there's just more themes. And again, that means more textures and more models. And suddenly we can't fit everything into memory. So a piece of technology that we're doing now is we're going to be streaming in the map data so that for these big story missions, we can have a player progress through it. Now obviously, you're picking heroes at the beginning, so it's not as important that we support the hero switching, but we do need to support these really large maps and all these extra themes.
Yeah, another thing that new themes gave us another challenge was like unit readability. With Overwatch 2, because this is now a PvE and we don't have the red outlines that we have for PvP to rely on for a quick read, with new themes, that means the same units, the same null sector nullifiers that you're playing in Rio on the exterior are the same ones in the interior areas of the map, and those have totally different lighting conditions, different colors, different themes. How can we create enemies that pop and are readable within all of those themes? So we look to Torbjorn Malmer, one of our engineers on the Overwatch team, an actual Torbjorn.
The Torbjorn.
The Torbjorn. He helped us out with some new technology that helped pop these characters out. Taking a little bit of the information around them and just boosting that light on those characters. And if you look at the nullifier on the screen here, and those power generators beside them, those are actually the same color, but then with the lighting boost, it really helps the enemy units, pop out.
An interesting note on the development of this Rio de Janeiro experience. Originally, the entire map was at night. And we have a little video of this in a little bit, but the interesting thing is as we were playing it, on the art side, a lot of feedback and readability feedback is everything's blue.
Yeah, Billy, it turns out that moonlight bounces blue everywhere, so
you
everything's
did your job very well. And everything was blue. The engine's working. But then we were like, well, we actually want not everything to be blue. We would like a more thematic change, so we changed the exterior light of Rio to this dawn, golden kind of feeling for the player to show this hope inside the map. And then we still kept the blue sort of tone inside the Omnic ship, the ominous feeling. So we got kind of the best of both in there.
Yeah, and that really helped with the outdoor areas. But as Arn mentioned, that we still had the units that were in the shadows that weren't reading as well. So we had to introduce this technology to sort of brighten those enemies up. But that wasn't everything that we introduced. Obviously, a big thing that Billy talked about was having much more dynamic environments. And for us, that's something that's a little bit new, because when we set out to do original Overwatch, most of the maps there, we really saw them as PvP playgrounds from a gameplay standpoint. And because of that, we didn't really want to put a lot of distractions in there that would distract from that gameplay. So most of the maps were static. We still had our options, our opportunities to tell story through those maps, but in Overwatch 2, really those maps in the story missions, they're a character in that story. So what we wanted to do is take that opportunity to do much more with the maps. And it's a great opportunity for us on the technical side, but one thing we don't do at Blizzard is we just don't do text for text's sake. So we want to explore, like, what are the opportunities to make the game better through that. And there's a point just about every year, I think, where the team sort of takes a little bit of time to explore some of these out-of-the-box ideas and think, how can we advance our gameplay? How can we advance our technology? It's usually a difficult time for engineers because the artists and designers are doing crazy things.
What? So. John, come on.
So we have to look at what they come up with, and usually they'll put a lot of crazy stuff together, and they'll say, look, it works in the engine, let's just ship this, but it doesn't work on all the technologies that we support. So it means we have to take those ideas and sort of get them down to something that we can support. And a great example of one of those efforts is Lan Chang, who's a principal technical artist on our team, had done a demo of what a dynamic world would look like. And what she set out to do was, what would it look like if we took that Temple of Anubis with that, it was one of our first maps. It was a fairly simple map, but let's throw a sandstorm at it. So this is the demo that she came up with. So it's a really different look for Temple of Anubis. If you've played it, this is quite different. Obviously, if you were playing multiplayer in here, the enemy would be obscured in most of it, but all of these trees that are blowing, she actually created the trees using our cloth renderer. So she threw a whole bunch of particles in there. She played around with fog. There's a lot of things that she was doing here, stretching the engine and trying to figure out, like, how could we make this environment much more dynamic? And it's these types of things that really push us forward from a look standpoint and also from an art standpoint. And it leads to a lot of different technologies that we've put in. Some of these have come in over the years. Like we had weather systems that we just started to touch with Lijiang Tower. You saw a little bit of rain in there, but that's something that we're looking to explore much more in Overwatch 2. Another one would be some of the fog that was inspired by the demo she put together. And actually the fog that she had, it inspired this sort of dynamic changing weather as you go from one end to the other in Storm Rising. And you may have noticed that the fog comes in and makes a much more moody look. But we're going to utilize that much more in Overwatch 2. And then if you've played Rio out on the floor, you notice that the lighting looks like, or I hope you noticed, or maybe you didn't, but the lighting is much more improved there, and we really want to get that feeling in the player of these new environments and this new dawn in the case of Rio. And in a portion of that map, there's also the portion where, spoilers, you destroy the core, and then the lighting changes everywhere, and that's another aspect of dynamic environment that we introduced. On top of that, we have the cloth that she was using for the trees, and so when we saw that much cloth in the environment, we knew we were going to have to improve the efficiency to allow for more cloth. We also wanted to improve the simulation as well. I think this is one of Arn's favorite screenshots here.
Oh, yeah, my favorite slide. Any friends from Canada here today? Yeah, all right. And then if you've played Rio, there's a lot more going on in that environment. We have explosions, we have a lot of particle effects. Again, something that we didn't really have the option to put into PvP because we want to keep that focus on the player versus player concepts. But these are all opportunities when we're exploring how we can expand the art and how we can expand the engine to add a whole bunch more to the environment. But beyond that, we have this example from Rio of where we've pulled all of that together, and you can kind of see like the particles and the trees using the cloth and all the additional effects. It's certainly led to a lot of changes within the engine. And so another way that we get the environment to be much more dynamic is through these things we like to call mission moments or sequenced events within the game.
And what we had a two-part thing, two-part consideration there, where if you've played Rio, you've noticed that we have an intro and an outro before the mission. And for every mission that we have in the story missions, we're going to have that intro and that outro. And those are done within our game engine. And so we wanted to provide tools to the story and franchise group that would allow them to create these intros and outros fairly efficiently. But on top of that, we have these mission moments within the game that as you're going through sort of convey much more of what's going on in the environment. So you might remember if you've played through Rio, as you run around the corner, you see this storefront that suddenly explodes and all of these all of these null sector units drop down. And so what we'll talk about a little bit here is how that came from inspiration and eventually ended up in the game. And what that came from originally was a piece of concept art done by the art team.
Yeah, Peter Lee, our principal concept artist on the team, he took the whole story that we wanted to tell for Rio, for the story mission, and he kind of illustrated these mission moments. Everything from beginning at Lucio's club, all the way to the Omnic command ship. He had illustrations for every single moment, and somewhere in the middle, he had this one illustration of this quaint little house, this nice view of the Rio beach out there, and it'd be a shame if we blew it up.
What?
Yeah. Blow it up, Billy. So this really inspired the team to be like, okay, this really gives the Rio a sense of destruction, that it's under attack. So it was really, really a defining moment in developing these mission moments.
So let's take a look at a little bit behind the scenes. It's a short clip at that stage in development of this sort of experience that the guys just described.
Really early on.
As you can also tell, here's the night version of Rio at that time too. So as Arn's group is working on the concepts and working with the designers, and John's groups on the technology side, also Dion and his group are working on the environment. They're building the architecture, they're building the world itself. And for example, like on our team, we have people from all over the world on the team. So one of the things in the environment side is we want a believable world. We want a world that feels like, oh, it feels like Toronto, or it could feel like Rio. We have a very talented environmental artist, Tiago Klafke, on our team from Brazil. And he owned the map on the modeling side. He's like, okay, guys, the street has to look this way, and guys, look, in Brazil, we do it this way. So he really helped kind of flesh out this world and polish this encounter along with all the other groups. It was a lot of fun.
I think he actually was the one who decided it wasn't going to just be a house. It had to actually expand to this storefront that looked much more like it belonged in Brazil.
And so let's take a look at the actual final execution of that, which you guys can play on the show floor as well.
Took forever to get that record to roll down the street there.
Every day we'd come in the office and go, get the record roll down the street, yeah, Johnny.
So that's a glimpse into how we've been evolving the art for Overwatch 2. We hope that you enjoyed it. We're certainly excited to show it to you. One of the biggest things I'm excited about as a gamer is we've wanted to, since the beginning, since we started on Overwatch, we've wanted the ability to convey much more of the story in the environment. We've been very, jealous of the cinematics team as they get to make all these cool story moments. And so I'm pretty excited to get together with my friends and play through the story missions and play through the hero missions. I think for me, that's going to be a really exciting moment.
Yeah, for me, as an artist who works on the characters, it's really exciting to take these characters that we know and love and see and challenge ourselves into how we push them to the next level, how we bring them to the next chapter of Overwatch. As a player, I'm really excited about how we do the same thing for progression, and like Aaron and Jeff were talking about yesterday, showing all the cool new talents that heroes have, and just seeing how all the different ways these heroes can express themselves to fulfill this new fantasy that we have for the heroes in Overwatch 2.
I think another passionate note too is that just building out the Overwatch universe, just more experiences for the players, new places in the world to explore, just developing this whole new universe is so exciting for me and a lot of the team as well.
Yeah, so we hope you guys enjoyed all the cool the stuff that we showed today. If you guys get a chance, please check out our demo over in Hall A. And we're always looking for more feedback, so tell us what you think, and there's going to be a lot more to come. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for attending Overwatch, Evolving the Art. Up next, World of Warcraft Q&A.